Hey guys, welcome to Treehouse number 31. So we've got Tim today talking about all the wonderful things he's put together in Treepl. So video on demand, is that right? Video on demand platform.
Yeah, I hope we do understand the same thing. What I want to show is basically like customers can buy video streams on a website,
Right.
and like what you would do with not with Netflix, because yeah, maybe also with Netflix, but you pay per stream. You don't have a subscription. You pay per stream, per product. And I just switch to my screen here. Wait a sec. So I did a little like slide here. You can also access that PowerPoint. I posted the link, the share link in the chat. So feel free to download that. So the use case is basically I have a client who's offering seminars to medical doctors who work with ultrasound. So, and I decided to do this on Treepl with the eCommerce module. So basically they are sold as physical products, but they're not, they're seminars. You can book. I'm not using the event module for that. So they take place live and also some online. And what's important to know is that the participants, they get certifications. They get certification when they do that. And they need those certificates, and they also need to comply with a certain standard because they will have to show that in order to progress in their career. Now my client has the idea, okay, we don't only want to do live seminars in hotels and conference halls and stuff, or like webinars. We want to like record courses and sell them online. And the problem with that, I come to that later, but they need the same process, the same workflow. So when someone is attending a video on demand course, they also need to prove their participation, and they need to be certified after that. So these are the challenges with that. First of all, the problem is how to actually stream video. What's not an option is to stream like HTML5 video from the Treepl server, obviously. But that something would come to someone's mind, that you just set up a secure zone and like make it payable. And in the secure zones are pages to access like videos on the Treepl server. That's not possible because we don't have enough bandwidth for that. That would be simply too expensive. Then there's a challenge that a video on demand product can actually contain several videos. That's a demand from the client, that they can put together like a collection of videos in one product, and it needs to be purchasable from the eCommerce module on the front end, like a regular product, putting in a cart and do a regular checkout. It's important that videos can only be watched when the customer has paid, of course, and like booked and paid one of these. And they need to prove their participation. And what the client came up with is they wanted to do a multiple choice test. So I know that other companies do this as well with their online training, that basically they give their employees videos, and then they have to do multiple choice tests to actually prove they participated. So that seems to be a proven concept. And when participants pass that test and they have the right result, they should also get the certificate for that course. And all of that should happen automatically. And they would also need to download that as a PDF. So that were the challenges. And before I come to some ways I've solved that, I just would like to dive into the actual website. And I've opened up the front end on the left and the back end on the right side. So you can basically see a little what's happening. The design is not my finest hour. What can I say? The client really likes green. So that's what I had to come up with. But anyway, so that's an e-commerce site with like all their courses, and I have a section here. It's called Video on Demand, and I have one video on demand course here, and I can basically purchase that one. I have a little teaser here. All of the videos are just my own videos. It's not actual videos because all of this is on a test site. I like to mirror the client side on my as a Treepl trial site. I call it staging because we actually don't have staging, but that's what I do. I try out things on my trial site first before I copy the code to the actual live site. So, and I can move on here, and I can actually check out with this like a regular product. And what's important to know is that everything happens in a secure zone. Every customer has to register and be logged in a secure zone. So that's what I just did. I logged in a secure zone, and I just got a message that actually I've already purchased that because I wanted to spare us the whole checkout process here. So I've already purchased that video on demand course. That's also part of the functionality of that website, that you can only purchase every course once, of course, because you can't participate like twice. And I got a message here that I have to go to my user account to see my video on demand product. So, and I can see it here. That's my product. I've also paid for it because otherwise that would be grayed out. And I can access here my collection of videos. It's 3. And let's imagine I've already watched all of them. I know what's in there, so I can move on to the multiple choice test. And I actually did that before. You can see this line. Sorry that most of it is in German, of course, because it's a German site, but I will translate everything which is important. So I have this like thing here telling me that I have already tried this test once, and I can check my result here, and the result is I only answered 60% of the questions correctly. So I have to go back, because on the left side you see the requirements. It gives me like 5 questions. I do have 5 questions to answer. I have to have 80% of them right, and I have 3. I can try it 3 times, and I just started again. And I get, for every question, I get 1 side. So it's not all questions on 1 page. That's quite important. So I put up this test in English so we can follow this a little bit. And this time I answer all the questions right. And yeah, that's South America. Capital of India is New Delhi. Highest mountain is Mount Everest. Of course, their questions would be a little bit more difficult. Polar bears, yeah, that's a tricky one. It's probably North Pole. And now I have answered all questions correct. And let's see what happens on the back end. I have here a little section, my back end, and I have this module. It's called test results and certificates. When I go in there, I can actually see my 2 items, and this is an advanced custom module. I can see 2 items with my name, my member ID, and the course I just participated. And I have a date here, so I can see this is the one I just did. And I can check here all the questions. That's quite good for my client, actually, because they can always go to the back end, and like if a customer says, oh yeah, actually I passed the test or something, I don't know what happened, they can always go in the admin and check. They can look for the member ID, they can search for the member ID, they can go into the test actually and check the questions, check the answers, and can basically really like troubleshoot that in case that happens. So I answered all these questions correctly. Now I can generate my certificate, which sends me to my user account again. And I reload this page here quickly. And now this last item changed its name. It basically has like certificate in front of the name of the item, like telling the admin that this actually is not like an ongoing test, because one of the demands is, of course, you would have to think of what's happening if someone is stopping in the middle of the test or loses internet connections. So they might have to pick up the test at the last question. And hence you will always have like the possibility to have more than one test run, so to speak. And this test run basically tells the admin that this actually resulted in a certificate. So I have two certificates here because that course, that specific course, has like a regular, like I participated certificate, and then there's a very specific certificate for a like special class of further training. It's called Degum. So they also needed that, and I can click on them and get this one for printing, or I can also click here and download that as a PDF. So I can open the PDF here. Usually this is like a test version of that API. So that's why there is the branding here, and this one is going one line further, but the live version doesn't have the branding because we pay for that. So that is how it works in the front end and in the back end. And now let's dive into the tricky bits, or like a bit how I actually did that. I'm not going too much into details and code and stuff. If anybody has a question after the presentation, I can also show you specific code, but I would rather recommend that we meet up on our Treehouse dev meeting on Friday for developers, so we can talk about details. But here are some of the solutions I picked. The first one is, how did we do the video streaming? That's quite easy. We're just using Vimeo as a portal because they offer a service with which you can basically embed videos on specific domains. So you have to pass a secret key, and those embedded videos simply can't be embedded or played anywhere outside this specific page, which is in the secure zone and which the client, the customer, has to pay for to access. So the video on demand product with like several videos inside is done with advanced custom modules. You could see that in the backend a little, or I can also switch to the backend for this one. So I have my video on demand folder here, and you can see there is this item, video on demand item, and it has these 3 videos. It's not the actual eCommerce product, because the actual eCommerce product is just linked via data source property to that video on demand item. So I use a separate module for the video on demand items. So how do I make sure that those video on demand items, products are only viewed, or can only be viewed by those who actually purchased the product and paid for it? So that's done by taking use of the CRM and secure zones, of course, because every customer needs to be registered and needs to log in before anything can happen. You can always check who is the customer and have a look at what orders did they do, what is the order status, if it's paid or not, and what's part of the order. So you can look inside the order, you can see, is there anywhere a video on demand product? And you can check this as condition before the specific video on demand item is actually showing up in the user account and can be accessed. You would do this at least on that part of the site where all the video on demand products the customer can access is listed. So that needs to be checked. Is actually like, is the product been paid for? And also on the video on demand detail page, in case someone is just copying the URL of the video on demand detail page and sending it to someone, another customer, that would not make sense, because there's also a liquid logic on the detail page to check if that video is part of the order list of the customer and is paid for. So the multiple choice test is also done with an advanced custom module and works with front-end item submission. So there are actually two modules. One module, two advanced custom modules. The first module is the one containing the tests. I can switch to this and have a look at that. So these are my multiple choice tests, and this is my example for today. Can look inside and I can see all my questions here. And each item has a list of possible answers and a number I have to fill in here for the correct answer, of course. The second module is the one with results and certificates. Here you would basically first set up a test and then create items from the front end for each answered question. And what's also important is that the item on the root level of this module, the main item, so to speak, or I can also show it directly. This is the root item here. Let's look at that. That's also created on the front end, right? And it's taking information from the test module. So it has all the infos which need to go on a certificate. That's also important, because we would want to have this at one place. So it's compliant with terms and regulations of the institution who is like taking care of those certificates, because it's a medical certificate. It needs to be very correct. So all the information which goes on the certificate is on the root level. And then there's one Boolean property giving me the information if that test has been passed or what the test score actually was. And inside that, I can see all the answers. I can see all the questions, and I can see all the answers. Once I've created those tests, it's easy to bring them together with the video on demand product, because I can just put a data source property in my video on demand item and say that that's the test you need to do in order to get your certificate. So how do I actually do the certificates? That's quite easy, because like once the test is passed and the specific result item has this Boolean character, this Boolean property passed set to true, I can check on the user account page and loop through all the test results and look for those who have been passed. And that's basically equal to a certificate. And then I just need to link to a HTML layout, pulling data from that module to populate the specific fields like name, subject, other things like graphics, signatures, everything which has been prepared for that test. The PDF download, as we can't render PDF on Treepl or create PDF endpoints on Treepl, I'm using a URL API by pdfcrowd.com. That works actually quite fine. So you just need to create a link calling that API with the necessary information and the URL of the page you want to like transform into a PDF, and they do the rest. It's also quite affordable. Like I pay like $80 per year for that. So some useful techniques I had to look for is like most of the test pagination and everything is done with URL parameters, of course. What's important after you created the test result object is to actually use a blank JavaScript forwarding page, because once you go into that test and you start the test and the test result object is created in which you would want to put the answer items, so to speak, before you can actually do this and create the first answer, the site needs to know what is the parent ID of that test. So what I did is basically I created a blank form submission result page, from which I could pull the ID of that just created test item and then forward that as a URL parameter to the first page on which a answer item is submitted. What's a bit tricky is like it sounded good when I did that to that point, but then I started playing a bit around, and of course, when you use browser back, you will like be confronted with a problem that you might submit an item twice. And I had this before with other pages, and I have a solution for that. Basically, what you need to do is, of course, some liquid logic can check if that item has been submitted before, but that won't work if the page is pulled from the cache of the browser. Then there's no HTTP call to the server, so the page is not rendered, so the liquid logic is not like been processed. So in order to do that, in order to check for previously answered questions, you actually need to make sure that the page is reloaded. And that's actually really a problem. So what I did is I tried out several things. And that's, again, some details we can talk about in a separate meeting. But what I ended up with is a little trick with an input field and some JavaScript to make sure that this test is actually, that questions are only answered once. Otherwise, this would result in more answers than questions, and that would confuse the whole logic. That's it so far. If you guys have any questions, I can dive into the demo again, but thanks for listening and giving back to Adam.
Thanks for that, Tim. Seems like done a lot of work there to get all that working. It's awesome.
It's totally crazy. I can show you something just for entertainment. Well, maybe I can pull it up quickly. Because I first of all, I needed to find out if that actually is possible, right? Can we actually do this with Treepl?
Yeah.
So what I usually do is let me check if I can find it anywhere. I make a little sketch, like a flow chart. Maybe you can find, yeah, here we go. Let me share this again, just to give you a little horror story. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
So this is my flow chart I was creating to actually find out if it's possible in the first place.
Yeah. Not confusing at all.
Not very up to standard. I know that you can have proper flowcharts, but it was just like doing a scribble in my head.
Yeah, I normally just scribble on paper.
What's also a problem is the customer wants to know, the client wants to know how much will this be. So you don't want to undercharge. You also don't want to overcharge, right? So you would have to make an estimate, like how many modules do you need to create? How much liquid logic needs to be included? And that's why you need to prepare before you can actually make an offer for a project like that.
Yeah. And you can go through all that, and you can even do little tests to say, okay, yep, that works. But it's when you get down to the finer details, like you said, with the back buttons and things like that, that's where all your time gets sucked away.
Yeah, exactly.
Little things that you can't even
nitty-gritty stuff. Yeah. But I find it a good example just to showcase what's possible with Treepl, actually. Like combining the modules, and also what you can do with a low coding environment like Liquid. You can really do a lot. Like, even though Liquid is not like a full complex server-sided programming language, but as a templating language, as a low coding environment, it's really powerful. And not to mention that this is, you have to pull data from quite a lot of modules sometimes, and the page still loads instantly. So that's also kudos to the Treeple team and the speed of the rendering that makes that possible, because that kind of takes long to load. It's taking the fun out of it.
Yeah. So I noticed on the certificates you had a barcode. Is that just a static asset that's uploaded for those certificates, or is that generated?
Again, sorry?
On your certificates that they download, there was a barcode. Is that generated, or is that like a static asset that you...
That's something the admins have to upload for that specific test. It's something they basically gave me a Word file. They made these certificates with Word. So they had to pull these graphics into the Word file anyway. So that was easy for me to code this into an HTML file and make these things properties. So it's pulled from the module. But I know that there are probably URL-based APIs with which you can at least do QR codes. Also in autoresponder email, because I was thinking about that when one client wanted to have something like a event booking system with which the customers actually get emails with the QR code with a specific ID with which they can log into the event. So and that would have been like a URL based API to create that QR code in the email, in the autoresponder email, or in the workflow email. That's like any kind of email we can create with Treeple, because we can't run any kind of API in this email field, right? So we have to use a URL based API. So there is an API which can create QR codes.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't there a font? Can't you use a barcode font sometimes? Have you ever heard of that?
Interesting. So basically you can like use regular like a string and turn it into a barcode.
Yeah. And you apply a barcode font. I haven't done it. I just remember someone talking about it.
Yeah. I have seen that, but you'd probably run into issues with fonts, like in emails particularly, so it could fall over. But yeah, there are barcode fonts.
But it might be faster than uploading images if you could generate it as a PDF or use the font to generate the image or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, these are exactly those things I want to talk a bit more about on our Treehouse dev meetings. There's these little tricks you can do to find solutions which make our clients happy.
Yeah.
Hello, by the way, and sorry I'm late.
No worries.
I found it really interesting how you're doing the test results. I would have probably just went to a form for that, but yeah, seeing you've got like answers that need to be right and wrong, and how you're doing the two modules. So what's the person doing the test actually? Are they submitting another custom module item as those answers, or how are you getting the answers?
Each answer is basically one child item.
Right.
Is submitting one more child item. And what makes it, because I was thinking, okay, how can I make it so I can actually develop a liquid logic to like make a result, right? To like test, to check if the answers are right and the percentage and everything, if the user has actually passed. And at the same time, I wanted to have it as flexible as possible for my client. So I would not want to give them like something like you can only have 10 questions in your multiple choice test. I wanted them to be able to make as many questions as they like. The only limit is that in that multiple choice test, there are only maximum is 6 possible answers. You can like usual multiple choice tests, how we know it, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and stuff, they have 4 possible answers you have to pick, but some have up to 6. So that's the limit. You can design questions with up to 6 possible answers. That's the only limit. And yeah, what's happening once the test is started, once the user starts the test, in the advanced custom module for the test results, a parent item is created. And then for each answer, a child item is created. And in that child item, you would have the answer, of course, and you would have a ID of the question item, which makes it really easy to loop through all these answers and check if the question was answered right.
Okay.
And the rest is quite easy. So what was a challenge for me is actually to make the liquid logic not too complicated, because when you code in liquid, it can get messy pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you end up in endless includes, and it's not very structured. That's the problem with liquid. So you need to keep it short. And what I also started doing, I can also show this quickly because I have my code open here. Like stuff like this, for instance, I started putting a little section in front of my liquid code where you don't need to do that. You don't need to define variables in liquid. You can just use them. But I do it anyway, just for good practice, as like when I come back to this project in a year and I have to change code on the side, I actually know what these are the variables used on the side.
Yeah.
And commenting, of course, that's key.
I did a somewhat similar project with a legal firm where they were offering training videos, and they needed to be like certified once they'd finished watching. And the solution I did there, again with Vimeo, they have an API where you can track the progress of the video that's being played. So I think it was like every 10 seconds, I was polling the API to see where they're up to and recording the actual progress. So even when they came back, if they were halfway through, because these were quite long, these videos, they could come back and start off where they were left off. And then when it finished, it would trigger a custom module item submission and mark that they'd completed it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was quite a good way of doing it. But the testing is good too, because you get that knowledge, because they can just let the video play, of course. So
that's interesting, because they were going for a different solution before they came to me with that, which is called EloPage. Don't know if anybody knows EloPage. It's a platform for video training, and like they have a whole e-commerce solution for video on demand where you can basically buy and do all of this. And they tried this out for quite some time, and they had problems with it because it's not customizable. Mm-hmm. And it's also outside the user base of the actual website, because people register on the website and then they would have to register again on that Elo page account, on that Elo page. So they were not happy with that. And they were asking me, and they were also asking, can we just do it? Like, can we track if someone has actually watched a video? And I'm not good with JavaScript and API. So my thinking first goes, okay, what can I do in Liquid? Because I'm better in Liquid than in JavaScript.
Yeah.
And I kind of was talking to them, and we came up with a multiple choice solution, because the argument is like anybody can just watch that video and just like go and have a coffee, or like let it go, let it run, and just like do anything else or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
multiple choice test means you really have to watch it, and they don't want to give complicated questions. Those questions that they will put in the test are just really to see if someone actually watched the video.
Yep. Yes, and now that you say that, I do remember with this project there was a separate form. So the video was tracked separately, but there was another form where they just had to put there was a code that was shown in the video at some point, and they had to put that in. So, yeah, that's sort of a way to get around that as well.
Oh, that's also nice. That's also nice.
Yeah, like a hidden thing.
Yeah, I'm always when stuff like this comes up, I'm always happy to collaborate with someone who's a little bit better with JavaScript.
But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point with Treepl, because often, you know, there's all these platforms out there that do those specific things, like a video training platform, or you know, even for booking like classes and things like that. But they're often overkill. So a client only needs 2% of what that whole platform does.
Yeah.
So it's hard to use, it's hard to customize. So I find that on Treepl, you can really just give them exactly what they want, and then you can customize it down the path if they change how they're doing things, and really make it unique for their solution. So yeah, I really like Treepl in that regard, which is what you're doing here. So.
With Elo Page, it was also that like they couldn't deliver one specific feature they wanted, which was that some of the videos customers would have to pay for, but they also wanted to give videos for free.
Right, yes.
And Elo Page couldn't handle that. You would have to set up complicated ways to do that. And with Treeple, I can just like mark property. I can do a property, or can like do liquid logic, and very easy to handle like a request like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you mentioned the video restriction is just done by domain, isn't it, with Vimeo?
Yeah, exactly.
That
works pretty fine.
I haven't really found another video service that does that well. Like I think YouTube doesn't do it, and to get it in anything else, you have to pay like the premium price for those high-end video services. Like Brightcove, I think it's called, and some other ones. But yeah, so I think Vimeo is really. Did you find that Vimeo was really the only choice in that regard?
No other choice than Vimeo. We also did some research about that, and yeah, we ended up with Vimeo also because they basically have a service on their premium plans to sell video on demand, but also on their own checkout system, their own payment and whatnot. So that's why we went there. That was in the back of my mind anyway. But then I checked the other features, and then I put one and one together, because I know if I can basically restrict the streaming to a specific domain, I can put this on a page in a secure zone, and it's all good. I can do the rest with Liquid. So,
yeah, it's surprising YouTube doesn't do that. I guess they want people back to their platform. Don't know.
I think it's, yeah, probably. And YouTube, they have a premium model, but the YouTube premium model is more like focused on content and not so much on features for video, whatever, embedding. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Okie doke. So good talk. Shall we finish the recording? Nobody else has something.
Yep. Okay. So if no more questions, I'll switch the recording off and we can have a bit of a chat.
Welcome.